Hi, grade 9s. Today we're going to take a look at one-step equations that we solve by doing the operations of multiplying or dividing. The two golden rules we learned yesterday are still our friends, and that is we always do the opposite, and what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So let's take a look at a few examples. First up, we have 4a equals negative 20. So what we need to do is we need to take a look at what operation is happening between the 4 and the a. And there's nothing that looks like it's between the 4 and the a. So when there is nothing between a number and a letter, what that means is 4 times a. So 4 times a, that's what that means. So it means 4 is being multiplied by a. So what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what is the opposite of multiplying? And the answer is dividing. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. So I rewrite both sides and I divide them both by 4. If we divide negative 20 by 4, it goes negative 5 times. The answer is negative 5. Okay? Question B. Negative 36 equals negative 3b. Again, we'll rewrite both sides, and then we will ask ourselves, what's the operation that's happening between the negative 3 and the b? And again, it's multiplying because there's a letter right beside a number. So we're going to do the opposite, which is divide, and we'll divide both sides by what we're trying to get rid of, which is that negative 3. And make sure you divide by negative 3. You're not just dividing by 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3, well, that's just 1. So we got b over here, and negative 36 divided by negative 3. So our knowledge of integers, of course, comes into play here. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 3 goes into 36 12 times. So knowledge of your multiplication tables is important when we're doing questions like this. Question C. C divided by negative 5 equals negative 2. Now, the C is being perched above the negative 5, and as I said, it's C divided by negative 5. So we rewrite both sides without doing anything. And then we have to say, okay, well, what do we do to both sides? Well, we do the opposite. And if C is being divided by negative 5, then the opposite is going to be, I was a little bit wild with that bracket, so let me readjust that bracket. We're going to multiply both sides by negative 5. So negative 5 on top and bottom, cross out. And I'm just going to be left with C on the left side. On the right side, I'm going to be figuring out negative 2 times negative 5. Well, I'm multiplying two negatives, so the answer is going to be positive. 2 times 5 is just 10. Part D, I have D divided by 4 equals negative 3. So, because it's divided by 4, what I need to do is I need to do the opposite. I need to multiply both sides by 4. And when I multiply both sides by 4, the 4's here do cross out or divide out because 4 divided by 4 is 1. So we're left with just D. And on the right side, we're multiplying -3 and 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. And it's negative because it's a negative times a positive, which is a negative. And there's 2 more questions. 2.5e equals -17.5. And again, if we're multiplying or dividing with an equation and it's got a decimal in it, it does not change how we do it. So, because it's multiplying in this case, we'll do the opposite, which is dividing, and we'll divide both sides by 2.5 because we want to get that e by itself. Negative divided by a positive is a negative, and we have to figure out how many 2.5s go into 17.5. Well, it does go evenly actually, and if we can count up by 2.5s, 2 2.5s is 5. So that means that 4 is 10. And if we keep counting, another 2.5 is 12.5. 6 2.5s is 15. And 7 2.5s is 17.5. So the answer is -7. If you have to, you can actually do this by long division. And you could also, because both those numbers have 1 decimal place, excuse me, you can think of this question as how many times 25 go into 175? And then if you remove the decimal, you might be able to think of it a little bit more clearly. Last question, 20 divided by f equals -4. This question's goofy because the letter's on the bottom. And because the letter's on the bottom, well, we have a different approach. We are going to cross multiply. And when we cross multiply, what we do is we multiply the top times the bottom of the other fraction and the other top times the other bottom of the fraction. And we set them equal to one another. So -4 times f is -4f. 20 times 1 is 20. And now we're given an equation that's just like all the other ones we've done today. One of the great things that we see when we solve equations is we could start with a more complicated equation, but once we do an operation to it or go through one step, then the resulting equation is a little bit simpler and may look familiar as one we've already solved before. So in this particular equation that I just wrote in black, the -4 is being multiplied by the f. So what are we going to do? Well, we are going to divide both sides by -4. And when we do that, well, 20 divided by 4 is 5. And when we divide a positive and a negative, the answer is negative. So the answer is -5. Just like last class, you'll be given a set of homework questions. Please work through them as best as you can. And next class, we will have a quiz on solving one-step equations by multiplying or dividing.